Can everyone hear me? Thank you. I love this. Thank you so much for the thumbs up. This is a lecture format, so I'll be using that kind of communication a lot. I really appreciate it. Hi, everybody, to familiar faces and unfamiliar faces. I want to, before I introduce myself, direct your attention to Chrissy, who is over here doing Zoom tech, and to Paul, who is helping as a session monitor. Please, they're here to be available and to help support you guys in ways that I can't while I'm focusing on the material. So just in my screen, they're right to my size, but that's probably not true. But please do take a moment to find them in case you need something. Okay. I want to take a moment to thank Earthdance and to thank all the team, the team of volunteers who have created this really bold and ambitious adventure that we are on. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to make imperfect strides into our future as a community. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be imperfect and move forward in our practice and the way we think and embody. My name is Sarah Gottlieb. My pronouns are she, her. I speak English and Spanish, but this presentation will be in English with the possibility of doing it again in Spanish or translating the recording. Que esto voy a hacer en inglés, pero con la posibilidad de poder hacerlo otra vez en castellano, por gente si prefieren recibirlo así en otro momento. I identify as a genderqueer, neuroqueer dyke. I'm white, Jewish, Puerto Rican, from a mixed ethnic family. I was born and raised in Chicago in the US, or Turtle Island. Chicago is the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes like Miami, Ho-Chunk, Sac, and Fox also called this area home. That text is taken from the American Indian Center. I currently live in Madrid, Spain, a land whose history includes the transatlantic slave trade, the Spanish Inquisition, both things responsible for the genocide and displacement of hundreds of thousands of people, including people from West African origin, Jews, Roma Gitanas, and Islamic people of various ethnicities and cultural origins. Spain is also one of the worst colonizing nations globally, conquering several parts of Asia, North Africa, and of course, vast parts of South, North, Central, and Caribbean America. Among many other silenced and or colonized cultures within Spain are the Roma Gitanas, Celts, Basques, Andaluces, and Spanish families of Moroccan descent. All the aforementioned is incomplete. These are incomplete histories and imperfect ways of addressing and acknowledging them. Today, Spain continues to hold colonial territories in North Africa and the Mediterranean, and also continues to assert military violence in the Mediterranean as one of the worst actors in the human rights crisis of Euro-African migration across the Mediterranean Sea. This is where I am. And that was a very high dosage of political terminology, a lot of heavy content, at least for me and my body. And that said, I have a pretty high tolerance for political content, a fair amount of experience in activist spaces. And even so, I want to acknowledge that the dosage level is going to be different for different people. And a big part of what we're working on in this session, in this time, is feeling that, recognizing it, and moving with it, right? Being with how we feel when we are confronted with doing the work of social justice on individual and collective levels. We will do this in the body, and we'll do this with words. So I'll offer a little bit that, when I say these things, it triggers a lot of anxiety for me. I get nervous. I wonder what I left out. I think about whose oppressions I did not name. I wonder if I identified myself well, if my own identity, if I express that the way that I'm even comfortable with. And that in my body creates shortened breath. My diaphragm kind of tenses. I can feel a sense of the way that my frame will contract around my heart. Sometimes I get nervous and I feel it as a form of nausea in my stomach, or my quads will tense, right? And I say this just to kind of make it a little bit lighter and a little bit more human, that we are in a process of working towards the kind of strides that we are envisioning taking. And I just wanted to offer my own experience to begin. I don't say it to make it light in the sense of making it less important to use the right words, or to take it less seriously to think about oppression, but I say it in a sense of making it light so that we can move. I say it so that we can make it accessible to change and for shifting. I'm going to have to shift my camera a little bit so you can see my hands, because I use them a lot. Okay. I want to share that I recently took a really amazing workshop with Eric Franklin, who does the Franklin method. It was a workshop about fascia and the pelvic floor. I'm really excited about it, and it's really in my body and alive for me right now. And even as I'm saying this, I'm embarrassed that the first person I'm mentioning is a white, cis, straight, able-bodied man from European descent. But I wanted to share it because he's also a person who works in movement research and in the fascial system. And I'm going to be using the fascial system throughout this lecture in a few different ways, because I love it, and also because it is an incredible living metaphor for how we change systems and how we embody the ability to change and be resilient as we adapt. In the workshop, Eric said something that I want to share with you, which is tension is the enemy of movement. So when we're talking about making change, when we're talking about releasing tension, transforming tensions, working with tensions, finding resources that help make things light enough to move, make them available to change, right? That we are talking about resources that help us create social change. And why am I saying this? Because this weekend we have the opportunity to hear so many brilliant thinkers talk to us about their visions of change, share their processes around how we as a community can and should change. And so I want to use this amazing opportunity to speak to you as one of the first voices that you'll hear, to provide some resources that I find useful in thinking about change from an embodied perspective and also from a social justice perspective. What else do I want to say here? I'm going to get to a different kind of introduction in a moment. In many ways, this presentation is about dancing with discomfort, right? We will be confronted with discomfort in this weekend if we are paying attention. If we are available to it, there will be things that will trigger a certain sense of resistance to change. I'm sure of it. And I think if anything, if all goes well, at the end of our time today, you'll have a place to remember that you did that well, that you have experience changing, and showing up even in spite of resistances. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go into a movement exercise. And if what I'm guiding isn't accessible to you here, I'll just say that the point of the next exercise is to create awareness and sensation. We are going to do this for the purpose of noticing how the very act of creating awareness and sensation actually helps support movement. So if the actions that I'm guiding don't work for you, don't worry about it. Do something else that helps you tune into creating sensation. And if they do work for you, then come along with me. We're gonna start, and as I said, I just did the Franklin method training and I'm so excited about it. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna tap up the right and down the left along our intestinal tract. We are working on proprioception here. So we're just working on waking up sensation. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just tapping. We're going to bring this over in front of the heart and the lungs. And then over the skull. You can make some sounds if you want. And you might repeat that again. Up the right, down the left. Over the heart and lungs. Over the skull and the bones of the face. And we're going to migrate towards one arm and we're going to tap this out. I'll do it a little bit more quietly so that you can hear my voice, but feel free to really tap under the armpit, the shoulders, tap this out. Good, and we are engaging here the fascial system. We're telling it to wake up because there's movement, there's change that's about to happen, right? We're getting our nerves to pay attention, and then we're going to start gliding and shearing, right? Many, many layers of fascia that navigate change in the body. Okay. And we're going to take that same arm, we're going to shake it out. Agitate the system. Beautiful. And then we're just going to bring it over our head. I'm raising my arm over my head and then move that arm through space in any way. If this isn't accessible, another movement with what you just addressed is fine. And don't go to the other arm yet. Just really kind of focus on giving yourself this experience of what you just paid attention to, what you just woke up. How easy it is for it to move, to shift and adapt and exist in space. Now, just move the other arm for a comparison. We really didn't do much, but it probably feels a little bit more limited, a little less able to navigate or integrate complexity, right? So let's go ahead and give it some attention, some proprioception, which is paying attention to ourself. Again, I'm tapping quietly because of the mic, but you can feel free to clap it out. And shear it and glide it. I love the fascial system, and I also love the subcutaneous fat system underneath it. So as you're shearing and gliding, do get into your tissues a little bit. So delicious. And then go ahead and shake it out. Agitate the system. Sometimes we're a little better prepared once we've been agitated, just a little bit, right? And then go ahead and move through space and just notice the difference from a minute ago. Probably way more complex, right? You can even notice the other arm. It might even feel kind of dull in comparison now. Mine does. Right? We need such constant reprogramming to be alive and awake. It is kind of pathetic, but also kind of great. All right, and we'll bring that to a close. Go ahead and kind of give yourself some self-touch and self-love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here and available. Okay, we're going to continue. Proprioception. We are teaching ourselves to notice ourselves, and that's a really great place to be when it comes to social justice, right? I want to give an introduction to this chat, to this lecture now. Really, the structure is that I'm going to talk. I'm going to be in a big flow here. And part of that is because I've had an extremely hectic week on a personal level, and my creative brain has limits, and I couldn't think of a more interesting way to do this, given my resources this week. And the other side is actually strategic. I've been working in the field of white deconstruction in Spain for the last many, many years. And something that goes into that is actually valuing the practice of receiving information that you are then in charge of digesting, registering, and dealing with without becoming then the center of anybody else's attention. And so there's something of a practice of being in a space where you know that for this period of time, not forever, but for this period of time, you're going to be working with yourself in dealing with some information, right? We are going to be practicing some of the resources. I'll be giving you resources, but we'll be practicing receiving information and having to restabilize ourselves, notice what's comfortable, practice handling what's uncomfortable without entering into debate, without giving our point of view, just for this moment, right? It's part of the strategy here. And that's not to say that my perspective is better than anybody else's. That would be absurd. There are so many teachers here, right? And there are so many people here who I have learned so much from and would love to hear speak for a really long time. But it's just to kind of enter into the space where we develop a tolerance, perhaps a little bit greater than our own comfort zone, for just kind of processing on our own. So you will mostly be listening to me. And that said, I am conscious that I am in a group experience right now and that I'm trying to facilitate something that's engaging. So I will be doing movement exercises. There will be group rituals that we do in the chat, and also group rituals that we do together in movement. If something isn't right for you, of course, you can elect not to do it, but I will ask people to kind of show me some love around participation, because it is nice for me when that happens. Are you guys with me? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Super appreciate it. I titled this "The Politics of Patience." I am thinking of patience as the practice of appreciating with deep compassion the discomfort of change. And I'll say that again. I'm thinking of patience as the practice of appreciating with deep compassion the discomfort of change. I'm placing that discomfort and our systems of resistance in our minds and also in our bodies. We are talking about change in this conference, the future of CI. We are talking about change. We are talking about social change in the context of a physical practice. And we are talking about physical change in the context of a social practice. The body itself is an agent of change. It is a metaphor for social change, and it is also the site of change itself. To better understand what the state of being open to change feels like, we're going to have to first notice what resistance to change may feel like. And sometimes when we think about change, we might experience resistance. This can happen in a context in which we are hearing or thinking about social justice, necessary changes, people saying what they want to see in CI. So I'm going to ask you, please, if you would, to put into the chat changes that you would like to see in CI. I'm going to read some of them, but go ahead, like just right away, off the bat, where we are, what are some changes that you would like to see in CI, starting today? I will read them as we go. Can give you an example. I love being naked in front of people, but I think that it might be time to pay more attention to having closed dressing rooms in CI. I think it might be time that we don't take for granted the fact that it's okay to like skinny dip and be in saunas together always, for example. Right? What are some other changes? I know that there are a lot of changes here. A greater range of abilities in practicing. Good, thank you, Penny. 2 or 3 more. What are some changes that we may like to see? I'll put one, affinity spaces, right? So that means people, queer brave spaces, know as a gift, a celebration of aging and body change, a new beginning in teaching. I wonder what that would look like, teachers. CI happening in all venues, right? Okay, bringing it into communities, right? Business meetings, family reunions, different bodies, right? Moving beyond the dancing body, the stereotypical dancing body, embracing equity and overcoming disparities as the foundation for increasing diversity, not as something that happens after diversity. Okay, increasing diversity, good. Communication, addressing privileges, sharing of privileges and responsibilities. Okay, so I acknowledge several, but I would like to eventually progress to greater acceptance of open changes. That's great too. That's great too, right? So being comfortable, right? Bringing consent and sexuality awareness of CI foundations. And this is the thing, is we're not going to necessarily agree with what the changes are. And that's okay. That's okay. Part of what I want to address here is what happens in our bodies when somebody suggests a change that we don't like. Something that someone suggests a change that for us would require a sacrifice of something we hold dear. In my body, again, my breath will kind of get short. I might get flushed. What are some things, could you put in the chat, what are some things that might happen in your body when somebody suggests something that might mean the sacrifice of something you hold dear or a change that you don't want? What if I told you that from now on in CI, you always had to ask every single step of the way if it was okay? What were you doing, for example? What if I said white people absolutely have to pay, $20 to go jam? It's another example. It's not a terrible idea, but just to put example, what happens? Anger, tightness around the heart, freezing, leaving, right? Checking out, absolutely. Disengaging, right? Frustration, disinterest, holding of membranes. Oh, that's so specific. I love it. Nausea, blaming, good. So there's thought patterns too, right? There's thought patterns. And some people might feel curiosity, very good. So what I want to do here is kind of address what are really kind of reactions of fragility to change. And I don't say that with judgment. I say that from a place of being helpful, right? When in the body, when we have change coming towards us and our fascia system is super healthy, change feels like something we can really ride, right? We do this as we're dancing. Oh, it's something new. I love it. It's exciting. And sometimes we feel fragile, scared. Oh, if something goes wrong, I'm not going to be okay. Something goes wrong and I'm going to be injured, right? It's a physical level. On an emotional and psychological level, right? This idea of fragility, it's important to recognize. It comes in it's so normal and it's so natural and it's so deep that when there's change coming and I think that I'm going to lose because of it, I might feel tension, I might check out, I might get angry, I might get emotional, right? They're responses. We know this, but it's so important to know it on an embodied level and acknowledge it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Symptoms of fragility, embodiments and thought patterns, right? So this is one way that we can talk about deconstruction. We can talk about it as somatic deconstruction. We can talk about it in terms of recognizing these fragility patterns in the body and giving ourselves a little bit of love when we feel them. So will you guys meet me here? Like giving yourself a little bit of somatic love to address your body when it has fragility reactions. So if you feel tight, maybe kind of shaking. If you feel a little fragile, maybe helping yourself integrate on a cellular level. Health for your fascial system makes you adaptable. It's delicious, right? We have some resources here, and they are resources that we have already used in this session and that we can continue to use throughout these 3 days. When we're in touch with experiencing resisting to change, it helps us also think about what helps us facilitate change in the body. Come with me. We did this already. We improved sensation. Today we tapped, we sheared, we shook, we sense ourselves. We register change on a physical level, right? When we compared. I asked you to be conscious of a shift in your own experience. And these are tools of proprioception. The body gives us so many tools. Noticing ourselves is key to change. Today and during this weekend, we will be working on noticing our own reactions and integrating some tools and resources for dealing with discomfort so that we don't shut down, but rather we can stay in the game. We can stay available to hearing people, right? And to being present in the work of change. It also helps to have a clear idea of where we're going, right? Which in improvising and in collective experiences is complex, but there are some things that can help. When I said, over your intestines, when I said over your heart and lungs, these are roadmaps, even though you don't know what I'm gonna say next, but it helps to orient. So on a social justice level, that can look like getting familiar with the landscape, learning terminology, exposing ourselves to being educated about social justice and power, which we are doing right now. High five. Thank you. We are doing that right now. And if that's the dosage that we're good for during this time, that's great. right? Not all change comes at once. If just hearing more people talking about these issues is the work that you're doing in deconstruction, that's great. That's great. Okay. I also want to refer now to the incomparable brilliance of Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergence strategy. She talks about embodied social change being available to be open to the change that emerges, both individually and as a community. We don't always know exactly what we are liberating as we work towards deconstructing patterns and being open and available, right? We don't always know what the fruit of that will be, but we can appreciate compassionately the experience of being present with it. That will make it easier to progress. Another thing beyond proprioception, learning the landscape and the terminology, right? And appreciating change as it emerges is the importance of self-talk. So we're going to do a thing together. We're going to do an embodiment exercise. And if what I'm guiding here isn't accessible to you, the point of this exercise is to create awareness about how the words we say to ourselves affect our own experience. And you may choose different actions or postures to embody than the ones that I am modeling. And we're going to start just with the shoulder roll. And we are going to say to yourself, and please say to yourself, please say it out loud if you can. This is so pleasurable. I love rolling my shoulders. Oh, this feels so, so good. Oh, this feels amazing. I enjoy my movement so much. And then continue moving and say, oh, I feel so tense. Oh, I feel so stuck. Please say it to yourself. Oh, I feel so disgruntled. Chrissy, can you open people's mics? I want to see if people are speaking.
It's really stuck. I can't move it all. Oh gosh.
Oh, it's
So
tight.
hard.
Oh Mann.
Whoa. Whoa. Hey,
Hey.
this doesn't feel very good. This doesn't feel good. I don't feel good at all. I feel really bad right now. Terrible. For sure.
Okay, great. How is that? Kind of different, right? We're going to do it again, right? We're going to do it a different way. I'm going to open my arms out wide. I'm going to expand my vision towards the upper horizon. I'm going to open my chest and I'm going to say to myself, and I'm going to keep your mics on for this, I want to change. I love transforming. Change is beneficial to me. I am adaptable. I am resilient in change. Chrissy, can you open people's mics for this?
Change is wonderful.
Wow.
Wow.
I really want
Love
to have
it.
change.
I'm ready
to
change.
I really want to have change.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I will
Need change. I really want
and
to
will
have it.
say yes.
Der wieder voller Wunder neu gefunden hat.
Okay, notice how you feel. We could continue to play this game, right? We could do that and say the opposite things again, but you get the idea of where we're going. It really does matter what you say to yourself inside. This is a real power that we have, an actual manifesting superpower that we have to create embodied change. Please, please use it this week. Okay. We're actually going to play that game a little bit more. So we're going to embody the same position, but this time we're going to say, I hate change. Change is scary. They're taking everything away from me. Everyone's going to judge me. I feel humiliated. I'm being criticized. Everyone's attacking me. I'm going to lose okay, you got it? But we're going to do this. Yeah? All right, let's go. Mic's up.
Oh, ich hasse Veränderungen. Das gibt's doch gar nicht schon wieder. Veränderung.
Oh, I don't like that.
Oh,
Ja, wir
no,
überlegen
this
uns
is
am Anfang.
fine. They
This is
take
horrible.
everything on purpose.
All open here.
He wants to
This is
Not
about
again, not
move.
more
Clean
change.
myself.
No.
Idea.
Very friend.
You
No.
Oh no, really?
Hi.
Why?
I can't do
Why?
that.
Hi.
Okay. And that embodiment didn't make any sense with those messages, right? Like not at all. So how would you embody those messages? Let me just see it and I'll describe it as what you were telling yourself. How would you embody, right? Hands to your face, hands to your throat, crossed arms, right? Shoulders slumped, right? We are in this constant dialogue in our posture, in our gesture, and in our words and thoughts. These dialogues make us more or less available to information that's coming in. That's the point of that. Let's just shake that out for a second, tap it out, get available. I like the idea of availability more than I like the idea of listening. I'll tell you why while we do this. Sometimes I think when we listen, we're kind of listening to a soundtrack, like, oh, I don't know what's going on, I'm listening, and it's a little pre-programmed. And we don't always necessarily then hear or make ourselves available to responding to what's actually happening in our shared environment. So I like to work for availability here. All right. So we're going to put a positive harvest in the chat now. I'm not looking for neutral feedback. I'm looking for a positive harvest. What is good about having the resources of proprioception, movement, posture, touch, and self-talk in making change? What is good about that? We have these powers. Love. Keep going. Positive harvest. Let's make it rain. We need it. We deserve it. Aliveness, empowering, resonance. Good. Keep it going. Don't rely on other people. You're here too. Makes people laugh, smile, be silly. Yeah, my feelings can be affirmed and transformed. Beautiful. Joy, making choices that we are part of, ownership, self-trust, community, authenticity, connection. Beautiful. Shifts, challenging energy. Beautiful. Very good. Very nice. Okay. Deconstruction. Here we go. The word deconstruction in our, American culture, US culture, I think has been really popularized around the idea of white deconstruction. Robin DiAngelo is the most famous person who writes about that and works about that, but it's important to name that really this work comes out of communities of color doing anti-racist work for a long time, right? And then there's this idea of intersectional deconstruction and intersectional cultural theory, right? I'm going to make an assumption and say that there are people here who are very familiar with this concept and material, and then that there are some people here who are less familiar. So if you are very familiar, please put a 5 or a 4, the numbers in the chat. And if you're not familiar at all, please put a 1 or a 2, and please everybody participate, because what's good about this is that we understand that we are in a mixed community, and it's very brave. If I see a 1, that is a brave person. That is a brave person saying, I am stepping into a learning curve. And we can be compassionate about that, because the reality is that those of us who put 5s, we were probably not a 5 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, or maybe 10 years, or yesterday, right? So I like to do this so that we can really help each other understand that we are all the same, just on a different place in the spectrum, right? Okay, here we go. The idea of deconstruction. What's going on? Can you mute people, Chris? Thank you. The idea of deconstruction is directly related to the idea of oppressor identity. Okay, I'm going to give a very oversimplified explanation, very imperfect explanation of intersectionality, oppressor identity, and deconstruction. Okay, so we have all these different parts of our identities that overlap with each other. We have our race, we have our class, we have our gender, we have our sexuality, our ability, right? Our languages, our countries of origin. We have so many different factors, and they all kind of intersect and connect and tangle together in a really complex way. Each of us is a microcosm, and we are each unique in that complexity. Now, the idea of oppressor identity comes with the idea that each one of these threads, each one of these identities actually has two sides, much like two sides of a coin, oppressor identity and oppressed. And that this exists in a very real power dynamic that is it's bigger and more micro than each of us as individuals, but that we actually do embody, right? We are actually programmed as oppressors and as oppressed in different ways. So please put into the chat all the ways that your identity aligns as an oppressor, as an oppressive group. So mine would be white, able-bodied, from the USA. Please put it in the chat. Be generous here, if you would. Educated, middle class, white, European passport, white, European, please be brave here. White, able-bodied, EU citizen, European, good. Do I have any cisgendered people here? White, good, educated, dual citizenship, physically fit, Asian, cisgender, white, middle class, cis, Swedish, higher education, right? What about men? Do I have any men here? Older, rich, right? Language skills, higher education, right? Let's, a few more, put it in. Let's just let this rinse, right? Just a few more. Cis male, heteronormative, educated, economically privileged, right? What a group of oppressors we are. Terrible, terrible. Okay, and then let's put into the chat the other side, how our own identities are aligned with being oppressed. Same people speaking. Let's talk about how we are oppressed, right? Go ahead and put that in. Woman, migrant, female, artist, old. Holly, you're not old. Female, queer, man, working class. Queer. Yeah, younger sister, woman, aging, non-Christian. Yeah, yogi, interesting. Female, social, trauma survivor, right? Queer, non-binary, trans, right? Hippie, Jewish, right? All right. So, we could take this, and we're going to take this a step further. Now, seeing this, some people would take this and say, okay, everything balances out anyway, right? Everyone has oppressions, everyone is an oppressor, so let's just call it a day, forget all about it, go have ice cream, all of this is ridiculous. And really, this is where deconstruction comes in and says, no, time out, we have a responsibility to step into, right? We are at least responsible for making the parts of our identities that fall into the oppressor category less harmful. We are at least responsible for working to lessen and eventually neutralize the power we have over others that contributes to their being oppressed. I would personally go to take it a step further and say that we are also at least somewhat in charge with the responsibility to advocate for the parts of ourselves that are oppressed. But that's perhaps more of a personal choice. And let's start from the place where we understand that we have a social, civic responsibility to help neutralize the parts of ourselves that are aligned with oppressing others. Yeah? Yeah? All right. That's a big step. It's a big step. So this is oppressor programming, right? By no fault of our own, we are born into the position in which we are doing harm to others in the parts of us that are aligned with oppressor identities. It is programmed, it is inherited, right? And it's not about, I have the fault for this, you're a baby, you're born, right? But it is in your body and it is in your mental scripts, which gratefully, to some extent, we have the capacity to change relatively quickly when we do it well. It requires lots of work and lots of things. It's associated, our oppressor scripts and our oppressor identities and programming is associated with the idea that we are superior, that we are normal or the status quo, that our stories deserve protagonism, our histories deserve space, right? Deserve to be told. We deserve safety and security, even if it's at the expense of others, right? And there's subconscious programming around oppressor identity. And that's why deconstruction is so important. And deconstruction refers to the work that we do to do less harm to others through our positions of power. So right now, notice what's tense in your body. What's nauseous, uncomfortable, queasy, trembling, agitated? What checked out? And just notice, it's yours, it's your body. Maybe you can address it a little bit, right? Maybe you can start to touch and soothe and move. Yeah? Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we're talking about when we're talking about oppression. We're talking about human rights. Human rights have, and please move through this. If it's uncomfortable, if that helps you stay present, please move. This is our resource. We can do this. Somatic deconstruction, somatic social justice, somatic allyship. Let's do this work. There are two sides of rights. There are privileges and immunities. So that means that, on one hand, the parts of ourselves that are aligned with oppressor identities have an easier time accessing things such as housing, jobs, education, vacation time, safety, support, health, money, communities, right? Culture. Immunities are things that probably won't happen to us because our identities are aligned in the oppressor group, right? Things like not being stopped by police or killed by police, being jailed, less likely to be trafficked, fired, raped, beaten, die young of a preventable illness. Keep moving here. This is heavy, right? Less likely to be deported, less likely to be taught that you will fail, right? When we deconstruct our identities, it's really important to think about our oppressor experience, right? From both the privilege side and the immunities, right? And when people talk about experiencing racism in CI spaces, yes, as part of the oppressor group, it is our job to be available to hear that. And when people talk about experiencing sexism, ableism, violence, right? It is our responsibility as part of the oppressor group to be available to that. Okay. We're going to move a little bit. And I want to hear, as you move, as you shear and tap, some of your experiences. So some self-talk. I want to hear some positive self-talk. Things like, I'm working towards good things. I am a part and available to change. I am available to shifting patterns. It's okay that I'm not perfect. I want to hear this as we move a little bit. We're going to do this just 1 minute. Chrissy, can you turn on their mics?
available to change.
Ah, okay.
I can change.
freue mich darauf, neue Erfahrungen zu machen.
Förändra saker.
Vorne zu schauen. Ich freue mich darauf, andere Menschen Austausch über meine
I really like noticing change.
meine Fähigkeiten anzuwenden. Ich freue mich darauf, alleine zu sein. Selber zu begegnen.
Sarah, oh, there you
Yeah,
go.
I got it. Just for a moment, register this. Just register this moment. You can use this moving forward. You do not have to be perfect the next 3 days or in the future of CI. My hope is that we can be available, that our practice can help us be available. During this time in coronavirus times, we have changed a lot of patterns very quickly. Please, if you would, put into the chat a couple of patterns that you have shifted, things that you never thought that you would do, things that you have large, serious resistances to doing that you did. Yeah, let's read some of these. What are some things that you did? I set up a webcam, teaching online, never going outside unless veiled, right? Started jogging, not traveling to see family. Yeah, quitting toxic relationships, good for you. Never taking a plane, right? Wearing a mask, being on Zoom, right? Like a million things. Not touching people, so abstaining from sexual relationships, abstaining from dance, abstaining from seeing loved ones, right? We did a lot this year. And we're going to shift this for a second. If you are somebody who felt vulnerable this year, if you are somebody who had somebody close to you who was vulnerable this year, please put me in the chat, or please put something, yes, me. It's like on behalf of my community, I can put my father, my mother, me, right? And let's just take a moment also. People made some very serious sacrifices this year. People lost jobs. People didn't have the chance to say goodbye to people. So let's take a positive harvest and thank each other for these sacrifices this year. Go ahead and put in the chat, what do you want to say to people who didn't go out, who didn't dance? It's really important to take moments to thank our allies sometimes. Let's do this. Let's say thank you a little bit, even if it's general. It's not over, but it's important that when we change our patterns in order to account for the social change that's necessary to support other people in our community who are vulnerable, it's important to register that. It's important to register this. And moving forward, it will be important to remember this. Go ahead and give yourself some love. In my last minute here, I just want to say a couple words about the difference between deconstruction and implementation. Sometimes we can implement change at the same rate that we are ready for that change to be enacted. But most often, implementation is out of sync with how ready and available we are. Let's be patient about that and compassionate. And I still urge you to not give up on this work of deconstruction and of being available to hear each other in these 3 days and in the time ahead. Let's put our hands towards the camera if we can. That feels good. All right. Thank you.
I don't know if it's okay to say hello, but I just wanted to say that we start another session in 5 minutes. Is that correct?